Good morning. I am on the West Coast, so it's still morning for me, but good afternoon to those who are on the East Coast. I am Agatha Iris, and I am your teacher here. So, a little bit of history. I am originally from the East Kingdom, and my original research and what I was laureled in is medieval underwear. But since moving to Ontier, I have become obsessed with all things early period. So, lately, I've been focusing on Bronze Age and all things Bronze Age, material culture. Um, so uh, Let me jump right in to sharing my screen. Hopefully, I can figure this out and do it. I haven't done it since COVID. Wonderful. Uh, this is just an overview of Bronze Age clothing. So, I'm going to be talking about female clothing and male clothing, so masculine and feminine, whatever suits you. I am a big believer in wearing and creating what you want to wear and create. So, what my focus has been in lately is the Danish finds. So, I'm looking at Denmark and mostly from the late Bronze Age. So we're talking about 1370 BCE to about 1360, 1350. So these are pretty specific, like a 15-year time frame. And so in the handout, you'll see some links that will open up, and you have access to this, hopefully through your email that I sent out today, so that you can click on those links and view them at your leisure. So the first one that probably most people are most familiar with is the Ektved find, or the Ektved girl. That little top and that little string skirt. There's also with that find, she had a belt plate. You can see that on the mannequin behind me, circular belt plate. And I don't think there were shoes, but I think there were foot coverings found on her. The most interesting, I'm going to give a little history about her, especially because I've done more research on her, is that she traveled from Germany, from the Black Hills, the Black Forest area of Germany to Denmark, back down, and then back again where she eventually died and was buried. She was about 18 when she was buried. She was also buried with a bark box. I think she also had a bronze awl and hairnet, probably also a comb. I know that at least one person, a friend of mine, has done a brew based on her, the evidence of drink or a beer that was found in one of those containers. So that's just fascinating. And the next one I want to talk about is probably the most interesting to me, construction-wise, and that is and I always butcher this name, the Skridstrup woman. She's also from Denmark, obviously. Her outfit is a little more complex. She is wearing a very ornate hairstyle or hair covering made of, I think it's cord and net, a horsehair cap. And she had this top that she was wearing. Sorry, my my messages are making noises. She was wearing a top that was patterned much like the Ektved girl. I don't think I included her patterning here for the Ektved girl, but the pattern for the top that the Skridstrup woman is wearing is so complex in the arm area and the neck area. There is what we would consider some embroidery. And I am currently working on a neckline that is similar to the one you see here in this image. The arms were sort of embroidery pleated by a design that was embroidered in and then tightened to create these pleats. It's fascinating. The next group that I became interested in, and the one that I base most of my own kit on, is the Borum Essage group. And that is a group of three burials, two men, so an older man, a younger man, and a woman, an older woman, were buried in this mound. And in her find, we find that short little top again. This find also, along with the skirt strip woman, was wearing a tubular, what we would call a skirt, held up with a long woven belt. Everything that I have learned about the Danish finds is that all of the fabric, because I know this question is going to come up, all of the fabric was wool and done in what we call tabby weave or plain weave. And many of these pieces are really coarse, not what we would consider fine at all. All of the fabrics were very coarsely woven. I'm not sure why. I've read some speculation that perhaps weaving was new to the Danish folks in the Bronze Age and that their technology hadn't caught up with some of the other groups, like the Must Farm, for example, had really fine examples of woven linen. And that one was in England. So just a little aside there. So the woman was wearing a short little top, and it had a slit down the front. Now that slit is not finished at all. So the thinking is that perhaps her they cut that to get it over her head after she had passed away, and not used for anything other than just to try to get it on her after she for burial. I was hoping that maybe it was used for nursing or something like that. No, it is not a finished edge at all. Now the men were wearing something really fascinating. At the end of this um, handout, I'll show you a slideshow of a friend who has reconstructed men's gown. So the men's gown, one of them was wearing what we can only call a wrap dress. A wraps around the body, a strap going over one shoulder, the other end going under the other shoulder, held in place with fibulae or tutuli, which are circular brooches, and those tend to be about mm, 2 inches, as opposed to her belt plate, which it tends to be more like 8 to 10 inches. And they also wore caps. They had woven caps that were, I believe those ones, oh, we're looking at Muhlenberg Man. Sorry, there were caps in the Burra group, but those were done out of scrap fabric that were sewn together. Then there is Muhlenberg Man, who's wearing a very similar outfit with a sort of kidney-shaped cloak. Trintage Man also wearing a very similar um, uh, wrap dress or gown. Um, and in the Bora Message Fine, I know I'm going all over the place, guys, sorry. In the Bora Message Fine, I believe the older man was wearing what we would call a skirt or a kilt. There's no evidence of the men wearing any sort of tunic or top underneath anything, whether or not they did and it has disintegrated, whether or not it was linen or any sort of bast fiber, we don't know. There's no evidence that they wore tops that we know of. So these finds also come with a lot of grave goods. We're talking daggers and fibulae and um, birch bark containers. Often there's pottery. I am in the middle of recreating this piece right here. The that little piece of pottery there. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but I'm circling it. Uh, so that little piece of pottery I thought would be this cute little, this size thing. But I'm pretty sure it's like large, comparing it and the with the image on the not university, the Museum of Denmark website. That pot is a lot larger than you might imagine. This is so weird teaching without questions. I'm really used to like letting people talk, but I just want to try to get through the material. And again, if you have questions, please put them down in the chat. So moving on to creating your own. So I know that was a really quick overview, and I apologize, but I want to leave time for questions and for looking at the kit that I have on the slideshow. So in general, the clothing pieces from the finds are really similar. Both the Ekved girl find, the Bora Meshage find featured that one-piece woolen blouse. The skirt strip woman also wore that blouse, but it was a little more ornate in its decoration. The cord skirts are fascinating. I have not made one yet, but my very good friend Sulakina has, and it's amazing. And that's something I want to explore in the future, but I haven't made one yet. Those were found in other burials as well, and sometimes found with maybe just barely evidence of a waist belt with a little bit of something hanging down, but then toward the knees, little tubes of bronze that may have made the skirt jingle as the person walked, which is fascinating and I want to try out at some point. So shirt patterning is really, really simple. And if you are going to attend my Bronze Age women's tunic class, I suggest you try that out. If not, I can make sure that you get a link to those class notes if you would like them. So the shirt patterning is really simple. I actually am a big cheater and I did not use measurements. I found a t-shirt that fit well, but not too loosely, that also wasn't too stretchy. And I use that as my pattern to lay out to create this shirt. So the neckline is towards the center. It's more like the top third. So if you imagine this shirt in thirds, so the top third folds down to become the arm and part of the back, and the bottom two-thirds becomes the body of the tunic. The side pieces here fold together in the back, and those arm pieces fold down to become sleeves. It's actually the cutest thing. You can make the pattern and make them on a sewing machine, and they are so comfortable and so cute to wear. Just a little something there for you. So people have told me over and over that they would love to wear this shirt modernly. So this is the patterning for that shirt. I'm not really going to talk much about it unless people are really interested in the chat. We can chat more about that. Skirt patterning is really, really simple, literally a tube. So what I do often is I use the fabric so that the selvage is at the top and the bottom, and then I just make a tube and sew the raw edges together. How voluminous you want that skirt to be is up to you. I like mine pretty voluminous, but I also don't always have a huge budget. So I do like to maybe 2 yards. I'm not a very big person, so 2 yards is a great size for me. So I just literally sew that into a tube. You could do it by machine or you could do it by hand. Again, all of the fabric in the Danish finds were tabby woven wool. And so the seams were very, very rough. Sewing thread was also wool, 2-ply for the most part. I have been doing a little bit of research into finding, affordable 2-ply wool to sew with, and people in the chat might have ideas for that. I heard that DMC, I think it's DMC, the embroidery floss company, um, has made an eco wool line that I want to explore and perhaps use for sewing because the sewing thread I use for my wool is a single ply and it will break kind of often. And I'm not a spinner, so I'm not going to spin my own. But if you get a really like thin fingering weight or lace weight wool that's 2-ply, that is a great option for you for sewing with. And sewing stitches are done using overlapping edges and just whip stitching. Same with the shirts. So the shirts were done with and I've got my example here. This is this is the Bora Meshage shirt that I've made. You can see the neckline is done with a double row of buttonhole stitches. And then the seam itself is done with a double row of just whip stitches on the inside and outside. This fabric is, go ahead.
If you want to hold up an object, you need to stop screen sharing
Oh, okay.
so that you
Sorry
can
about
be the
that.
big screen. No, no, this is a learning experience. So
Okay.
we'll be here.
When I'm done talking, I'll show all that stuff again. I promise.
Okay.
Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, so the men's gowns and kilts are really interesting. In my work with my friend Finn, we discovered that it made a lot of sense that one would weave a wide piece of fabric and then cut a cloak out of that, like a wide oval cloak. And then what's left would make, if you look at this shape here on the left, would make the perfect shape here that matches this, and then any other extra fabrics on the other side. So that's just a fascinating thing I'm going to try out with my husband. He has agreed to be my Garby doll and perhaps even wear a Bronze Age men's gown at some point, which I'm super excited about. And I am not afraid to wear men's clothes either, so if he won't, I will. I've already talked about fabric types and sewing threads and stitches. Let's talk accessories. So belts. The belts were woven with heddles or tablets. The tablets are hard to find evidence of. We know that there were tablets in the Iron Age, but it's hard to prove from the Bronze Age. I think there are very primitive uh, uh, tablets that may have been found, but from what I know, it wasn't quite a thing yet. And so using a heddle loom would work just great for belts. And these belts had tassels at the end that had these sort of felted bits at the very end that held the tassel together. And the Ekved skirt, that string skirt, was done the very similar way, held together at the bottom so that the skirt stayed together and that flowed still, but it didn't like really flow and show everything off. So um, that is belts. Now, the belts tended to be about 5 to 6 feet long. Some were a little longer. Mine is ridiculously long, and I realize now that it does not need to be that long because it wraps around me 3 times. Um, and you can see in this image here from the Borum Essage find that it looks like it could be done with tablets, but they're thinking that the effect you're getting there with the diagonals is the different spin directions of the yarn. So S and Z spun yarn used in different areas to get that sort of chevron or zigzag effect, which is fascinating. Shoes. So I have an obsession with shoes. And if you're taking my shoes class later, you'll see all those things. But the Bronze Age shoes tended to be pretty simple in construction. We're talking U shapes with maybe a little bit of addition of an ankle bit, but or oval shapes drawn up with a thong at the toe box and sewn up the back with another thong, sometimes integral, and just very, very simple construction. And the leather that would have been used sometimes had fur on still. And oops, something just fell. Still had fur on some of those, and sometimes the fur was on the outside, and sometimes the fur was on the inside. Sometimes it was oil tanned, and sometimes it was not tanned at all, and it was just a rawhide shoe, which I can't imagine wearing, but you know, you use what you have. Capes were a thing, obviously very simple oval shapes or rectangular shapes. Jewelry is most often bronze, bracelets, arm rings, finger rings, neck rings, earrings, often in spiral patterns. And I have an obsession with spirals, so I definitely have some of that. This is from the Boron Message find here. There were some things found with the other two finds that I talked about that you can learn more about. There were hairnets the women wore. I have made these. I don't wear them because my hair is very short modernly and very brightly colored. So I don't wear these anymore, but they are relatively simple to make if you're a spranger. This is made with sprang, and it's a slightly different style than modern sprang is made in, but you can still get the same effect doing regular sprang. Doing the Bronze Age sprang technique. Is a little different and a little more frustrating, but it's still beautiful. The caps were mostly found in men's graves or male graves, and they're conical in shape, woven and creating this tiny. There's these little, they look like little furry bits. Um, those were made with individual threads that were brought up through the fabric and probably knotted. Sally Pointer did a great video on this cap. And so if you haven't watched Sally Pointer on YouTube yet, you should check her out. She's got some great videos on lots of different topics from early period. I've also included some fabric resources, some sewing thread resources, and further reading. I don't have a really full developed bibliography here yet, but I'm working on it. So that is the end of my uh, handout. What I want to do now is see if I can go to my, hold on. I want to go to my slideshow, and I need to figure out how to do that. So let's see. So this is my kit that I've developed. I've got obviously more because I go to lots of events. That fabric on the skirt that I'm wearing is a nettle fabric because we know that there were examples of nettle and linen being used, especially in England, probably in other finds as well, but I know for sure in England. And I've got my shoes there. Now, some people wonder about socks. Like, did they wear socks? So there's evidence in some of these finds that foot wrappings were worn. So they might have been just lengths of wool that were wrapped around the foot. Or I've also seen, I can't remember which find it was, but there was an oval of fabric with evidence of holes around the perimeter of the oval that had possibly been used to pull up and tighten around the foot. And I've made a pair of those, and they're just like little foot pouches made of wool, and they're actually quite comfortable to wear with these shoes. I do want to work with leg wraps though, because my legs do get cold. So that's my women's outfit. Now, hopefully, there we go. This is my men's, not mine. This is Finn. My friend Finn made a gown out of some wool that he happened to have. Now he used twill. If people are going to come up to you and like nitpick about twill and tabby woven, you know, I wouldn't worry about it too much. It's really hard to find tabby woven wool these days. There are a couple of places I found it, but it's actually quite tough to find. If you can't find it, twill works fine. And what you want to try to look for is a natural color. So they weren't using dyes at that time. They were using the natural color of the sheep wool. So that is the end of that. I want to stop sharing. So if I want to stop sharing, how do I stop sharing? Stop share. There we go. All right. So I am back. Can you see me now?
We're good.
All right. So we've got a lot of time for questions. So if folks want to go, we can start doing questions and answers because I work well with like a back and forth. So go for it.
Do you want to go back through what was dropped in the chat?
Yes, please. And then we can open it up for further questions.
Okay. Note a gentle Atlantean 12th night also experimented with Bronze Age beer.
Nice. Cool.
I'd love to hear a bit more about the shirt. I might miss the class later.
Okay. So the shirt. I don't have my patterns readily available. Let me see if
And
I can.
while I'm thinking about it, hold up the things you were trying to hold up a minute ago.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. Thread. Okay. So this is my thread. I don't know if you can see it. Uh, this is just a single ply thread. I find that it is, as it goes through the fabric, it's fine, but after a little while, it starts to get weak and loose. So if you can find a two-ply thread, that will be, or if you can make a two-ply thread because you're awesome like that, that will be a better option for you. Stitches. So I am showing one of my, this is the one based on the Bora Massage Fine. This is the hem at the bottom of the shirt. So you're looking at the two rows of buttonhole stitches and then two sort of rows of the whip stitch because I had to whip stitch from both sides of the fabric. This fabric is relatively ravel proof, so it doesn't really ravel, but I do have another a shirt that I'm making that does ravel a lot more. So it's a little bit different. This one's more appropriate um, to the correct weave of the Danish vines. So that one is got a little more raveling on it, but I think it will hold up really well. And I'm starting a neckline that I'm really excited about. Okay, the shirt pattern. What I want to do is I have it over here, I think. I didn't I didn't put it in a place that I could find it. I'm trying to think where I put it. Uh how do I do this without having a without having my pattern? Basically you're taking a piece of fabric and you're folding it down a 1/3 of the way. So if I turn around and I show you the back of my shirt, can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know if you Yeah, so you can see that there is a line of stitching that goes all along my arm, across my back, across to the other arm. And then there's a row of stitches down the center of my back. So you're taking the top third and folding it down. The top, where that fold is going to have your neckline cut. Now, if you hate necklines that are way up high under your neck, you may want to cut a little further down. Most of them were just a slit. I don't like mine right up against my neck. So either I will cut it a little lower or I'll take a pin. And I don't know if it fell out. I think it fell out of this. It did. Uh, I will often take a pin and pull it down like this, like a brooch, and that will pull your neckline down a little bit. What you'll find when you sew is that uh, your back will be shorter than your front if you don't have a lot of bust. So that's because when you're sewing, you're doing some overlapping of your pieces. So you're losing a little bit of length in the back. Um, I hope that answers your question. I really wish I had.
How do you deal with the intersection of all of the pieces at the back, where the back folds down and the sides fold around?
So what I do first is I fold down and then I will actually fold in and do that center back seam first. And then I'll sew the arm, and then the back, and then the other arm. Does that make sense? So I'll fold these sides inward, sew that, and then sew this seam. I hope
Thank
that,
you.
yeah.
Do you ever put in gussets in the arms?
I don't, but I know the Scrid Strip Woman one did, the one with the really fancy arms and neckline. She did have a really narrow gusset. So if you need more space for your arms, a gusset was done and it would totally work. I haven't done it, so you would have to play with how you want to make that work. I imagine it would be a triangle right about in here.
Yeah.
Were the sleeves
Question.
tapered at all? Like for my Iron Age stuff, I usually do a 20-inch or more wide shoulder. So I would think I would fold down a 20-inch piece, but then that leaves a 20-inch cuff, which is annoying.
Oh, yes, here. You're talking about here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I tend to, so long sleeves weren't really a thing. We think most of them were elbow length. just because of the width of the fabric, probably. But I do taper mine. I don't like that square. I do like to cut it into a taper. I really do want to find my pattern because it's going to bug me if I can't show you. So if there's another question while I look that I can answer, or we can.
In the chat, we have more questions. Are
Sure.
the lengths of the sleeves, shirt, crop or not, and skirt all conjecture?
Okay, repeat that, please.
Are the lengths of the sleeves and the shirt, crop or not, and the skirt all conjecture?
I don't understand that middle part, the crop or not. Cropped? Is that the word?
So
Um,
I'm gonna unmute. It's Tamar. So the length of the shirt from your neck to your waist.
Yes.
So the length of the sleeves, the length of the shirt from the neck to the waist, and the length of the skirt, are they all conjecture, or do we know how long they would have worn them? You just answered the sleeve one about being 3/4.
Yeah. Uh, so I don't have actual measurements for the extant finds. I know that what I've seen from the extant finds is that they are short. They probably sat at the waist. Like, so it is a little bit of conjecture. Like this is kind of long. I think that it would have been more like this. And then if you wanted to add a strip that was a little bit longer, you could. The length of the skirt, those are very long. And sometimes they were so long that they would have to pull this part like really far up and hang down even farther. The cool thing about the skirts is that you can also use them, if you're doing Iron Age as well, you can use them for peplos. So you can multi use them for multiple garments. Did I answer that question? Uh, yeah.
Pattern
So
class.
say that again.
I was just curious, how long have these pattern shapes been seen in history? Like, when did they start to not be seen and start going more towards the uplos?
Um, I don't see these really at the patterning of this. I don't see it all in the Iron Age. It's like they completely changed. And what started to happen was sleeves were separate, right? So you'd have the torso, like I'm thinking of the Lenbring tunic, for example. So that one's got uh, a seam only on one side and a cut on the other. The shoulder arm side is actually a little bit tailored and cut in, and the sleeve is tapered as well. So that jump, I don't know what happened. I'm wondering if it has to do with the Roman conquest, like the way they made their clothing.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Weirdly enough, the Dungiven jacket from the 16th century in Ireland has a sort of similar construction to the shirt. It's just the other way around. So the where you'd wrap it around the back in the Bronze Age, it actually is the front, and that's where the actual the buttons and everything are. So it's kind of backwards. So I was a little surprised when you were talking about the shirt, actually. So it does come
Yeah,
back, I guess.
I also
yeah,
took
that's interesting.
a Swedish hand sewing class that dealt with 17th century, and the shirt there was made like this shirt, except in the front was where the seams went together.
That's interesting. All right, I found my pattern, guys. So, all right, so I'm going to step back. So this is, it's hanging down, sorry. So this is going to become the body, gets folded in. This part gets folded down and becomes the top part of the top and the sleeves as well. So I sew this seam first, and then I sew this seam last. When you use linen, because come on, guys, I'm not going to wear wool year round. When you use linen, you do need to finish off your raw edges because they will become problematic. I cheated on this one and just used the selvages. So I used the width of the fabric for this.
More comments, and these two go together. Since the clothing was so raw, is it thought that these were quickly for burial? And I think you answered that. And the other one is, when you say coarse, what does that mean? What is the thread count?
Ooh, I think that I've read a lot about this. I feel like the thread count in the Danish finds was 8 to 10 per inch threads. And the warp and weft are often a little bit different, like 8 in one and 10 in the other. I'm not a weaver, so I don't focus on that part. I just know that some of these are super coarse. And if you click, I feel like, oh, one of my favorite books is called Bronze Age Costume from Denmark. Let me see if I can drop the link in the chat. So let
Is that
me,
the one by Margaret Hald?
yes,
Yeah, that one's online for free.
it is. That's what I was going to say. I wanted to drop the link in the chat, but I don't know if
I
I,
wrote copyright years ago and I hate doing that kind of thing because you could not get copies of it. So I photocopied the darn book. So I'm
yeah, and
glad it's
luckily
available for everybody now.
it is. Yeah, let me look. Bronze Age. I think, do you know off the top of your head what it is called? I think it's like bronze.
Costumes of the Bronze Age, Denmark.
Yeah, it's in my slideshow or in my
Yeah, if you search for Margaret Hald, I think it's archives, and then there's like a whole bunch of her books that are available for free.
yes, she also has a book or a shoes book, I believe.
Yeah.
Primitive shoes.
Can you put
Which
her
is good.
name in the chat, please, so I can get it spelled correctly?
Yes. Did you get the handout?
Yes.
It's in the handout. So if you don't mind checking there, or if somebody wants to drop it in, I don't have the spelling, and I wish I was able to get I can't get it. My Google Chrome. Here we go. Let's try that. So, costumes of the Bronze Age in Denmark. So, I'm going to drop it in, if I can, into the chat. I think I can.
Okay, so our
Got
next
it
thing
for you.
our next thing in the chat would be, what were the seasonal temperature differences of the area if you know them? It seems that sort of full body clothing would be optimal in the winter.
Right. So, I believe I don't think it was an ice age time frame. I know that the Ectvad girl was buried during the summer or early fall because of what she was buried with some flowers. So we know that she was buried during that time, and she was wearing the string skirt and the wool top. So that one was more lightweight. So I imagine it was, um, I don't know, I think it was temperate. So no, I don't know the weather, I guess.
Okay.
But the fact that they were wearing wool in Denmark uh, during the summer and the winter, it just shows us what they had available to them. Another really interesting thing before we go into the next question is that I know that a lot of the wool was not local to Denmark. They were trading with other areas, 75% or something like that. I've read a paper. Um, I need to add all of that to my bibliography, but 75% of the wool was not local, and they think it was German or something like that.
Okay. Are you aware of the upcoming book, Bog Fashion, Recreating Bronze and Iron Age Clothes by Nicole de Ruchy, I guess?
Yes, I'm so excited for it. I know that they've had some issues with life happening and some problems with their printing, but yes, I am so excited. I
It looks
totally
really
support it.
interesting.
Yeah.
I don't normally do Bronze Age, but I'm like, oh, this sounds so good.
Yeah, and she includes Iron Age too, which is really it's great because I do flow into the bronze or into the Iron Age sometimes too. So yay.
How
Yeah.
are the tassels put together? I haven't been able to find a how-to.
The tassels.
Yes.
Okay, so for the belts, I think that they were done on a continuous warp, right? And I know that at least one end of and there's a few of these belts that are found. So They're all kind of similar, but the boar massage one is the best preserved one to my knowledge. Those ends are done with, on one end, with the continuous fringe, right? That is created by plying, I think, four cords together or four pieces of the yarn together. And then there is roving, so unspun yarn, sort of put through that loop at the end and felted. Now, felted maybe wet. I doubt they were doing it with needles, but that is felted in sort of a donut shape. So yeah, and then they're often held together with a sort of a running or a stem stitch of some sort. You can, when you look at that book by the Bronze Age book that is in the chat, you can see really up close images of the belt and how it was finished. And they have lots of diagrams for how the fringes were made. And the fringes were made the same for the skirt as well, the Ekved skirt.
If you ever think, golly, maybe I'll write a tutorial about that, nah, nobody wants it. At least one person definitely does.
Yeah. So my friend Sulakina
At
has,
least two. At least two.
oh, good. So Sulakina, my friend,
Three.
would probably be able to help me with that because I personally haven't done that with my fringes yet, but that is definitely a goal and I really want to make that string skirt. So it's a goal. And when I figure it out, I'll share. I promise. I love sharing.
From what I can tell, the Borum Eshaw woman had two belts, one to hold up the skirt and one decorative. Is this the same for the others?
I believe that each find, I know the Ekved girl had two as well. Or she maybe just had one because she was wearing the skirt with an integral belt and then an extra belt. And I feel like that would have held the belt plate, that circular belt plate. I think the men had just one that I know of. So I feel like they were worn, there were two worn, one to hold the skirt up and one to hold the belt plate.
Do we know when dyed cloth started being used?
That is a late Bronze Age, early Iron Age. And the best evidence we have of that is the Hallstatt finds from Austria. So late Bronze Age, early Iron Age.
Was the fabric for the hats felted?
No, it is woven and it's almost like a patchwork. If you look at the resources that I include, they're very patchwork. Sometimes they've got sort of these knotted bits that are added to make it look like fluffy fur almost. But no, they look like they're just regular wool woven of different. It's like almost ridiculous, the different some of them are nicer than others, just like everything, right? And they weren't felted, they were fulled. So most of the fabric that you're going to see in these finds is fulled. And I believe that people wore these in their everyday life. I don't think this is simply burial clothing, judging from the wear that is found on many of these garments.
It would be pretty easy to two-ply your singles. Would it just be thicker?
Yeah, you can totally do that. And I've done that in some of my sewing when I wanted some more strength, for sure. Yeah, but I'm essentially lazy. So if it looks okay, I'm good. But if you want absolute perfection, yes, you can ply your threads for sure. Someone said they want to see my drinking cup. I did see that in the chat. So this is not Bronze Age. So this is, I believe, like Anglo-Saxon. So I'm cheating a little bit. This was made by Ferolfus I think he lives in North Shield. He is an amazing potter, and I got this at Pennsic last year.
How long have these pattern shapes been seen in the area?
You know, I have not found anything from any other time frame. It's really these three. That doesn't mean they don't exist, but to my knowledge, there have not been any complete clothing finds really anywhere else. There have been really fragmented finds. There have been finds of just fabric, especially at Must Farm. If you are not familiar with Must Farm, you should check it out. It's online. There's some amazing videos on YouTube, and they talk about everything from the textile production, which seems like it was big there, pottery production, all of that. But no, I have not found anything other than these particular finds. And because honestly, when I find something, I really zero in and go down that rabbit hole. And I am broad, but I tend to also want to focus on one particular aspect. So I did not answer your question. Sorry.
I'm actually starting to research 5th century Baltic late Iron Age.
Oh, very
So
cool.
for Lithuania, early that area,
Mm-hmm.
and finding very little information. There are a lot of, there are a lot of reproductions out there, but and there are a few. So it does seem to gravitate more towards the peplos, but I'm also wondering if that shirt or tunic became more of a tunic pattern to wear underneath.
Yeah.
So,
I wonder that too. And I've actually made, for myself, I've made my own longer version of the shirt. And I've made it into a long tunic that I just, sorry, I'm trying to reach for it, that I just belt, right? Because I like to be comfortable. This is totally conjectural. There's no evidence of anything, and it's not, and it's dyed. It's like a modern sort of pinky mauvey color. So just a long
yep.
tunic. This is Penzic wear, right? So it's made long, and you can actually see modern patterns with this exact pattern, but the seam in the front, and they call it a bog jacket. So you can make this modernly. I know that's a little bit of an aside, but
Very 80s.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
do you know where the bog jacket comes from? I keep seeing it in Skadian circles, and now I've seen it in some mundane crafting groups where they claim it's a historical item, but nobody can cite where it's from. It's circular. They cite each other's blogs.
Right. Same. I don't know. I think actually they're looking at the Bronze Age women's shirts and perhaps assuming some things about them. I've even seen a recreation of a grave find that someone did wearing a tunic just like this, but backwards. And that drove me nuts. But I was like, okay, it's plausible. Anything's plausible. So no, I have zero knowledge or evidence of this being found anywhere else.